As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster.
Hey, Mom, what do you think?
You look like a gangster.
What if I told you that one of the most famous scenes in Goodfellas wasn't even in the script? Or that real mobsters were hiding in the background of the movie the entire time? For more than 35 years, millions of people have watched Goodfellas and believed they caught every detail. They didn't. Hidden throughout this legendary crime classic are shocking, bizarre production secrets and behind-the-scenes stories that are almost as wild as the movie itself. A legendary camera shot only happened because a nightclub refused to let the crew use the front entrance. Even some props mysteriously disappeared during production. These strange stories reveal how Goodfellas became one of the greatest crime films ever made. Here are 15 weird things you never noticed. 1. The movie almost had a completely different cast. Martin Scorsese knew from the very beginning that Ray Liotta was Henry Hill. The problem was that nobody else at Warner Brothers agreed. Liotta was not a major star in 1989. He had appeared in Field of Dreams that year and had made an impression in Something Wild. But his name did not sell tickets the way the studio needed a lead actor's name to sell tickets. Studio executives pushed back hard. They wanted someone with an established box office track record in the role, someone whose face on a poster would move opening weekend numbers. Scorsese fought for Liotta specifically and eventually won. The role of Jimmy Conway, played by Robert De Niro with such precision that the character became one of the most studied performances in his entire career, was offered to Al Pacino first. Pacino turned it down. His reason was straightforward. He was concerned about being typecast in mafia roles after the Godfather films. He chose to play Big Boy Caprice in Dick Tracy instead. Pacino himself later said that this was a decision he deeply regretted. John Malkovich and William Peterson were also reportedly in consideration for key roles before the final cast was locked. 2. De Niro called Henry Hill every single morning. Robert De Niro is one of the most documented method actors in film history. His preparation for roles has become the stuff of genuine legend. For Goodfellas, his approach to playing Jimmy Conway, based on the real-life James Burke, went further than most accounts describe. Henry Hill, the real man whose life the film depicts, received phone calls from De Niro 7 or 8 times every morning before De Niro went to the set. Every single morning. The questions De Niro asked covered a specific and unusual range of detail. How did Jimmy hold his cigarette? Which hand did he use to write his name? Which side did he comb his hair? The prop master on the film had a separate De Niro story that became one of the most retold anecdotes from the production. In the scene where Jimmy Conway hands out money to associates following the Lufthansa heist, De Niro refused to use prop money. He said the fake bills did not feel right in his hands and that the wrongness of the texture would affect his performance. The prop master handed over $5,000 of his own personal money for the scene. After every single take, no one on the set was permitted to leave until every bill had been returned, counted, and confirmed. 3. The most famous scene was never in the script. The most quoted scene in Goodfellas history is the one where Tommy DeVito, played by Joe Pesci, turns on Henry Hill at a restaurant table and escalates a casual compliment into something that feels like a near-death experience for everyone in the room. The tension builds through a series of repeated questions. The other men at the table, who had been laughing moments earlier, go completely still. That entire scene was never written in the shooting script. Pesci brought the situation to Scorsese directly. When he was a young man working in a restaurant in New York, a restaurant frequented by local mob figures, Pesci had made the mistake of telling one of them that he was a funny guy. The mobster did not take the compliment well. Pesci told Scorsese about the encounter, and Scorsese immediately recognized it as the perfect window into Tommy, the perfect way to show how suddenly and completely the social rules of this world could shift under someone's feet. The scene was kept out of the official shooting script deliberately. Only Pesci and Ray Liotta knew what was about to happen. The other actors sitting at that table, the men whose faces register genuine confusion and fear as the exchange escalates, had no idea where the scene was going. 4. The intentional continuity error nobody was supposed to catch. In one of Goodfellas' tensest sit-down scenes, Henry watches as Paulie confronts Sonny about Tommy's chaotic behavior at the Bamboo Lounge. Paul Sorvino, as the calm but commanding Paulie, has a cigar comfortably in his mouth during an over-the-shoulder shot while listening and responding. Then the camera cuts back to his face for the powerful final delivery, and the cigar has completely vanished. Editor Thelma Schoonmaker and Martin Scorsese noticed it immediately but deliberately left the mistake in the final cut. Schoonmaker has explained in interviews that performance always trumped technical perfection in Scorsese's films. They had tons of continuity errors, but this one captured raw emotion and natural delivery from an untrained actor that a cleaner take simply couldn't match. 5. Real wise guys were sitting in the background. According to Nicholas Pileggi, who co-wrote the screenplay with Scorsese based on his own non-fiction book, Wise Guy, actual mob associates were hired as extras to fill background roles throughout the film. It was a deliberate authenticity strategy rooted in the specific visual texture Scorsese was trying to create. These were not men playing gangsters. These were men who had lived inside the world the film was depicting. And that specific background quality shows in ways that are almost impossible to reproduce with trained extras. The scene near the opening of the film, where Henry narrates and the camera sweeps through the Bamboo Lounge, introducing a collection of characters in quick succession, includes several real wise guys among the people visible on screen. Scorsese had a specific visual goal. The film needed to look and feel like the audience was watching surveillance footage of real people doing real things, not watching actors who had studied real people. 6. The Copa shot only happened because they got rejected at the front door. The Copacabana tracking shot is one of the most analyzed scenes in the history of cinema. It runs approximately 3 unbroken minutes, follows Henry Hill and Karen from a car outside the nightclub, through a back entrance, down service corridors, through a working kitchen, and out into the main room of the club, where a table appears in front of them as if materialized from air. The shot only exists because the Copacabana would not let the crew film through the front entrance. The production needed to show Henry moving through the nightclub in a way that communicated his status, his ease, his complete ownership of that social world. The original plan involved a more conventional entry through the front door. When the club refused permission for that filming approach, Scorsese and his team were forced to rethink the entire sequence. Rather than treating the back entrance as a compromise, Scorsese recognized it as something better than what they had originally planned. Walking through the back, through the kitchen, through the service corridors, past the workers, past the cooks, through every layer of the building that regular customers never see, was a more powerful demonstration of Henry's access than a front door entrance could ever be. Steadicam operator Larry McConkey described the shot as mathematically impossible to execute, given the number of precisely timed coordination moments required across the full path through the building. The shot was completed in 8 takes. The crew used Zeiss super speed lenses throughout because the low light inside the club required glass that could pull in maximum available light without a lighting setup that would have destroyed the naturalistic feel of the scene. 7. Michael Imperioli was shot in the foot before he played Christopher Moltisanti in Goodfellas. Michael Imperioli plays Spider, the nervous young waiter at a mob card game who makes the fatal mistake of talking back to the volatile Tommy DeVito. In one of the film's most memorable outbursts, Tommy casually shoots Spider in the foot, a moment that perfectly captures the unpredictable danger of that world. Just a few years later, Imperioli would step into television history as Christopher Moltisanti, Tony Soprano's hot-headed protege on The Sopranos. The overlap doesn't stop there. In total, nearly 30 actors appeared in both productions. Frank Vincent famously played the loudmouthed Billy Batts in Goodfellas, beaten, wrapped in a carpet, and stuffed in a car trunk, before returning as the ruthless Phil Leotardo in The Sopranos. Phil's brutal death, shot in the head and then run over by a car, serves as a deliberate callback to Billy Batts's fate. Tony Sirico went from Tony Stacks in Goodfellas to the unforgettable Paulie Walnuts. 8. The freeze frame that changes the whole movie. After the Lufthansa heist, as Jimmy Conway begins systematically eliminating the people who participated in the robbery, Scorsese starts using freeze frames on the faces of mob associates at the exact moment each one is about to be killed. The film literally stops. The face of a character is held on screen for a moment before the narration tells the audience what happened to that person. The technique appears to be stylistic, another piece of the film's aggressive visual grammar. But the freeze frame is actually doing something very specific to the audience psychologically. It forces the viewer to look at a person, to recognize them as a human being with a face and a history inside the film, at the precise moment before they are erased. 9. The preview screenings were a complete disaster. If anyone in the production believed they were sitting on a future classic during filming, the preview screenings quickly removed that confidence. Goodfellas was shown to test audiences in Orange County, California, before its wide release. According to Nicholas Pileggi, approximately 70 audience members walked out during the screening due to the violent content. 70 people in a single test screening getting up and leaving the film before it ended was not a small or ignorable signal. One executive producer described a screening that ended with the production team hiding in a bowling alley after an angry audience confrontation. The film that has since been placed on the American Film Registry, that has been cited by directors including Quentin Tarantino, Christopher Nolan, and Paul Thomas Anderson as a foundational influence on their careers, that appears consistently on lists of the greatest films ever made, was received by its first audiences as something too violent and too uncomfortable to sit through completely. Tommy's final shot is a 1903 reference. The final scene featuring Tommy DeVito, the moment when Joe Pesci turns directly into the camera and fires at the audience, is one of the most striking images in the entire film. It breaks the fourth wall in a sudden and jarring way. It pulls the viewer out of the story's reality and into a direct confrontation with the violence that has been building across the entire runtime. Scorsese designed that shot as a deliberate reference to a film made 87 years before Goodfellas. The Great Train Robbery, a 12-minute silent western produced in 1903, is one of the earliest narrative films ever made. It ends with a gunfighter turning toward the camera and firing directly at the audience. An image so shocking to early cinema viewers that people reportedly flinched and ducked. 11. The real Henry Hill said he wanted to be a priest. The opening line of Goodfellas is one of the most memorable in film history. Henry Hill declares that as far back as he can remember, he always wanted to be a gangster. It sets the entire tone of the film and frames everything that follows as the story of a man who found exactly what he was looking for and then lost it. The real Henry Hill said publicly that the line was not true. He actually wanted to be a priest. What changed his direction was not a born desire for criminal life, but a specific environment. His neighborhood in East New York, Brooklyn, was home to the cab stand and pizzeria operated by Paul Vario, a powerful figure in the Lucchese crime family. Young Henry Hill watched those men command immediate, unquestioned respect from everyone around them. He approached the cab stand at around age 12 and asked for a job. That was the actual beginning, not a lifelong desire, but a 12-year-old observing who got respected in his specific corner of the world and asking to be part of it. Scorsese and Pileggi changed the opening line to serve the film's thematic purpose. The real origin story was more mundane and more tragic than the version on screen. Hill was placed in the Federal Witness Protection Program in 1980 after testifying against his former associates. He was expelled from the program in 1984 after repeatedly revealing his own identity to other people, which is a remarkable detail that suggests a man who could not live without being recognized. He spent the rest of his life giving interviews, appearing on radio programs, selling autographed mob memorabilia, and charging fees for advice. He died on June 12, 2012, at age 69 from complications related to heart disease. 12. The film was shot out of chronological order. Scorsese structured the Goodfellas production schedule around practical and logistical needs, rather than the story's chronological sequence. Most scenes were filmed in an order completely different from their placement in the final cut. Ray Liotta, playing a character whose journey spans roughly 25 years from wide-eyed teenager to broken informant, had to maintain an internal map of where Henry Hill was emotionally and physically in the story at any given filming day, regardless of what sequence had been shot the day before. The physical transformation of the character across that timeline, the weight shifts, the aging, the increasing deterioration of the later years had to be tracked independently of the shooting schedule. Lorraine Bracco, who plays Karen Hill and received an Academy Award nomination for the role, described the disorientation of shooting a relationship in pieces spread across months, finding the emotional register for a scene that lands in the third act of the film, while scenes from the second act were still waiting to be filmed. 13. What the film actually did to American crime cinema. Before Goodfellas, every major American crime film treated its criminal characters as either villains to be feared or tragic figures to be pitied. The Godfather is a moral tragedy. Scarface is a cautionary tale. Even the best crime films of the era positioned the audience as observers of a world they were meant to understand as dangerous and other. Goodfellas made the audience complicit instead. Every single technical choice in the film, the voiceover that explains the rules of the world, the tracking shot that lets the viewer ride Henry's status through the copa, the freeze frames that make the viewer a knowing witness to deaths before they happen, the irresistible music that scores each escalation of violence. All of it is designed to make watching the film feel like being inside the life, rather than looking at it from a safe distance. 14. An accidental trip became one of the film's most memorable moments. One small moment adds an unexpected layer of charm and realism that most viewers never realize was completely unplanned. When Debbie Mazar makes her first appearance as Sandy, the quirky, free-spirited girlfriend who later gets pulled into Henry's chaotic world, she stumbles slightly right after meeting him. It's a brief, almost imperceptible trip that perfectly sells the idea of a woman instantly knocked off balance by Henry's magnetic, dangerous charisma. That stumble was never in the script, and not a directorial choice. During filming, Mazar genuinely tripped over the camera dolly track laid across the set. Instead of calling cut and reshooting, Martin Scorsese reviewed the footage and immediately recognized its accidental brilliance. The physical loss of footing read on camera as Sandy being so overwhelmed by Henry's presence, his swagger, his status, his dangerous allure, that she literally couldn't keep her balance. It captured the gravitational pull Henry had on everyone around him better than any rehearsed line or gesture ever could. Scorsese kept the take exactly as it happened. 15. The film that came out the same month shared the same research sessions. In one of the strangest coincidences in 1990s cinema, two wildly different movies about the same man arrived in theaters just weeks apart. My Blue Heaven, a broad Steve Martin comedy, hit screens exactly 1 month after Goodfellas. Nora Ephron, who was married to Nicholas Pileggi, co-writer of Goodfellas, wrote the comedy. Both films drew heavily from the same source: extensive interviews and phone conversations with the real Henry Hill. While Pileggi and Scorsese were crafting a gritty crime epic, Ephron was quietly turning Hill's stories into comedic gold without him fully realizing it. Hill later admitted he had no idea Ephron was pulling material from their talks for her script. When he saw My Blue Heaven, he was genuinely shocked to recognize his own life anecdotes transformed into a lighthearted, Steve Martin vehicle. Goodfellas has been watched billions of times across 35 years, and most of the things that make it extraordinary have been sitting in plain sight without being noticed. Every detail makes the film stranger than it already looked. Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this one.